You've contributed nothing to this family except disappointment and mediocrity. The words cut through the mahogany-paneled conference room like a blade, delivered by my own uncle in front of 12 family members who controlled every aspect of Meridian Holdings, our multi-billion-dollar real estate empire. What none of them knew as they systematically dismantled my worth and questioned my place in the family legacy was that I held the key to their survival. I was the silent owner of Pinnacle Development Group, the client responsible for 63% of their annual revenue. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Isabella Romano, and I am 31 years old. Until that devastating family meeting 6 months ago, I had spent the better part of a decade trying to prove my worth to a family that had decided long before I reached adulthood that I would never measure up to their standards of success and competence. The Romano family had built their fortune through 3 generations of strategic real estate investments, property development, and construction management, creating an empire that stretched across the northeastern United States and generated over $800 million in annual revenue. But despite bearing the Romano name and possessing the same entrepreneurial instincts that had built our family fortune, I found myself relegated to the periphery of the business operations, treated more like an obligation than an asset. The reasons for this systematic exclusion were rooted in family dynamics that had calcified over decades, creating barriers that seemed impossible to overcome regardless of my qualifications, dedication, or innovative ideas. The Romano family hierarchy was dominated by my father's older brother, Vincent Romano, who had assumed control of Meridian Holdings after my grandfather's death 15 years earlier. Vincent embodied the traditional values and conservative business practices that had sustained the family enterprise through multiple economic cycles, but his leadership style left little room for perspectives that challenged established methodologies or suggested alternative approaches to growth and development. My father, Marcus Romano, held the position of Chief Operating Officer but wielded significantly less influence than his title suggested. He had always been more interested in the creative aspects of architectural design and property development than the political maneuvering required to advance within the family power structure. His gentle nature and preference for collaboration over confrontation had gradually marginalized his voice in strategic decision-making and, by extension, had limited opportunities for his children to gain meaningful roles within the organization. Growing up in this environment, I witnessed firsthand how family loyalty and traditional gender expectations took precedence over merit and capability when determining access to leadership opportunities. My male cousins, Anthony and Michael Romero, were groomed from childhood to assume significant responsibilities within the business, receiving mentorship, resources, and increasingly important project assignments that prepared them for eventual executive positions. Meanwhile, my own interests in business strategy, financial analysis, and market development were politely acknowledged but never seriously considered as foundations for career advancement within Meridian Holdings. The assumption seemed to be that I would eventually marry well, contribute to family social events, and perhaps manage some peripheral charitable activities that reflected positively on the Romano family reputation. This systematic undervaluation became particularly evident during my college years at Columbia University, where I pursued a double major in business administration and real estate finance while maintaining a position on the dean's list throughout my academic career. My senior thesis on emerging trends in sustainable urban development received recognition from the university's business school and attracted interest from several major development firms seeking fresh perspectives on environmental and social responsibility in commercial real estate. But when I presented my research findings to the Meridian Holdings leadership team during a family gathering, the response was politely dismissive. Uncle Vincent acknowledged my academic achievements with the kind of patronizing praise typically reserved for children's art projects, while my cousins Anthony and Michael offered perfunctory congratulations before redirecting the conversation toward their own professional accomplishments and future plans within the company. The message was clear. My education and expertise were viewed as interesting hobbies rather than valuable assets that could contribute to the family business. This perception persisted despite my graduation with highest honors and my acceptance into Harvard Business School's prestigious MBA program, achievements that should have positioned me as a strong candidate for meaningful involvement in Meridian Holdings, strategic planning, and business development initiatives. During my MBA studies, I specialized in corporate finance and strategic management while maintaining focus on real estate markets and development trends. My professors recognized my analytical capabilities and innovative thinking, encouraging me to pursue consulting opportunities with major development firms and investment groups. These external validation experiences provided stark contrast to my family's continued indifference regarding my professional potential and career aspirations. The summer internship program at Goldman Sachs' Real Estate Investment Banking Division offered particularly valuable insights into how sophisticated investors evaluated development projects and made strategic acquisitions. I excelled in financial modeling, market analysis, and due diligence processes, earning recognition from senior analysts who praised my ability to identify overlooked opportunities and assess risk factors that other candidates had missed. But when I attempted to share these experiences and insights with the Meridian Holdings leadership team, my contributions were consistently overshadowed by discussions of my cousins' advancement within the company hierarchy. Anthony had been promoted to regional development manager despite lacking formal business education, while Michael had been named director of client relations based primarily on his social connections and natural charm, rather than demonstrated competence in relationship management or business development. The inequality became even more pronounced after completing my MBA and returning to New York with comprehensive knowledge of modern real estate finance, sophisticated analytical tools, and a network of professional contacts that could have significantly enhanced Meridian Holdings' market position and growth potential. Instead of offering me meaningful opportunities to contribute to the family business, Uncle Vincent suggested that I consider pursuing a career in interior design or hospitality management, fields he deemed more appropriate for someone with my background and interests. This suggestion revealed the depth of misunderstanding regarding my capabilities and aspirations, but more importantly, it demonstrated how traditional gender expectations continue to limit opportunities within family-controlled businesses, despite changing societal norms and evolving professional landscapes. The assumption that my value to the family enterprise would be primarily decorative, rather than strategic, reflected outdated thinking that contradicted everything I had learned about effective leadership and organizational development during my business education. The turning point in my relationship with Meridian Holdings came during a strategic planning retreat, where I was invited to observe but not participate in discussions about the company's 5-year growth strategy. As I listened to presentations that relied on outdated market data and conventional approaches to property development, I recognized numerous opportunities for innovation and improvement that could significantly enhance the company's competitive position and profitability. My attempts to contribute insights about emerging market trends, alternative financing structures, and sustainable development practices were politely acknowledged but ultimately dismissed as theoretical concepts that lacked practical application in real-world business environments. The irony was that my recommendations were based on successful case studies and proven methodologies that had generated substantial returns for other development firms, but my family's preconceptions about my capabilities prevented them from seriously considering my analysis. This experience crystallized my understanding that meaningful advancement within Meridian Holdings would require not just competence and dedication, but a fundamental shift in family attitudes that seemed unlikely to occur voluntarily. The realization was both liberating and devastating, as it forced me to confront the reality that my professional future would need to be built independently of the family enterprise that had shaped my identity and aspirations since childhood. The decision to pursue independent opportunities while maintaining my relationship with the Romano family required careful consideration of both personal and professional factors. I possessed the education, skills, and network necessary to succeed in competitive real estate markets, but I also understood that establishing credibility and building a client base would require tremendous effort and strategic thinking. The challenge was compounded by my desire to maintain family relationships while pursuing professional goals that directly competed with Meridian Holdings' business interests. The solution emerged through a combination of strategic planning and fortunate timing. During my final semester at Harvard Business School, I had developed relationships with several institutional investors who were seeking opportunities to enter emerging real estate markets through partnerships with knowledgeable local developers. These investors possessed substantial capital resources, but lacked the market expertise and regional connections necessary to identify and execute profitable development projects. My academic research had identified several undervalued markets in secondary cities, where demographic trends, economic development initiatives, and infrastructure improvements were creating favorable conditions for strategic real estate investments. The opportunity existed to establish a development firm that could serve as a bridge between institutional capital and local market opportunities, generating substantial returns while building a sustainable business model. The concept became reality through the establishment of Pinnacle Development Group, a strategic consulting and development firm that specialized in identifying and executing high-potential real estate projects in emerging markets. The company was structured to provide comprehensive services including market analysis, financial modeling, project management, and investor relations, allowing institutional clients to participate in real estate development without requiring extensive internal expertise or regional presence. The decision to maintain confidentiality regarding my ownership of Pinnacle Development Group was motivated by both strategic and personal considerations. Professional success in the real estate industry often depends on relationships and reputation rather than family connections, and I wanted to establish credibility based on demonstrated results rather than inherited advantages. Additionally, I recognized that premature disclosure of my business activities could create complications within the Romano family that might undermine both my professional goals and personal relationships. Over the following 18 months, Pinnacle Development Group achieved remarkable success through careful project selection, sophisticated financial analysis, and strategic partnerships with local developers who possessed complementary expertise and market knowledge. The company's portfolio grew to include mixed-use developments, commercial office buildings, and residential projects that generated consistent returns while establishing a reputation for innovation and reliability among institutional investors. The growth trajectory exceeded all expectations, but more importantly, it validated my belief that success in real estate development required the kind of analytical thinking, strategic planning, and relationship building that I had been developing throughout my educational and professional experiences. The systematic approach that had been dismissed as theoretical by my family proved highly effective in practical applications, generating profits and creating value for investors who appreciated sophisticated analysis and careful risk management. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. As Pinnacle Development Group's reputation and portfolio expanded, the company began attracting attention from larger development firms seeking strategic partnerships and consulting relationships. One of the most significant opportunities emerged when Meridian Holdings approached Pinnacle through intermediaries, seeking expertise in sustainable development practices and alternative financing structures for a major mixed-use project in downtown Philadelphia. The irony of the situation was extraordinary. My own family's company was requesting consulting services from the firm I had established after they had dismissed my expertise as irrelevant to practical business operations. The project represented exactly the kind of innovative development opportunity I had been advocating during my attempts to contribute to Meridian Holdings' strategic planning, but now they were willing to pay substantial consulting fees to access the same insights they had previously ignored. The Philadelphia project became Pinnacle Development Group's largest client engagement, ultimately expanding into a comprehensive partnership that included multiple development projects across 3 states. Meridian Holdings' leadership team praised Pinnacle's innovative approaches and strategic thinking, never realizing that the consulting firm they had come to depend on for their most challenging projects was owned and operated by the family member they had consistently undervalued and marginalized. The professional success was deeply satisfying, but it also created an increasingly complex emotional dynamic as I watched my family celebrate consulting arrangements and strategic partnerships with my company, while continuing to dismiss my potential contributions to their internal operations. The cognitive dissonance became particularly pronounced during family gatherings, where Uncle Vincent would praise Pinnacle Development Group's expertise while simultaneously questioning my understanding of practical business challenges. This contradiction reached its peak during the quarterly family meeting that would ultimately transform my relationship with the Romano family forever. As I prepared for what I expected to be another session of polite marginalization and systematic exclusion, I had no idea that circumstances were about to force a revelation that would shatter every assumption my family had maintained about my capabilities, achievements, and value to their continued success. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only my professional accomplishments, but my emotional resilience and strategic thinking under the most challenging personal circumstances imaginable. The invisible architect of their recent success was about to step into the light, with consequences that none of us could have anticipated. The discrimination I faced within the Romano family business was not the result of a single incident or decision, but rather a systematic pattern of exclusion that had been reinforced through countless interactions over more than a decade. Each missed opportunity, each dismissed idea, and each patronizing response contributed to a comprehensive structure designed to maintain traditional power dynamics while preventing any challenge to established hierarchies. The pattern began during my teenage years when family business discussions occurred around the dinner table at our estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. While my cousins Anthony and Michael were encouraged to share their opinions about market trends, investment strategies, and development opportunities, my contributions were consistently redirected towards safer topics deemed more appropriate for my participation. When I expressed interest in the financial aspects of real estate transactions, Uncle Vincent would smile indulgently and suggest that I focus on understanding the aesthetic elements of property design instead. These early experiences established a framework that would persist throughout my educational journey and professional development. The message was clear. My value to the family enterprise would be measured through supportive roles rather than strategic leadership, and my natural analytical abilities would be channeled toward areas that complemented rather than challenged existing power structures. During my freshman year at Columbia University, I attempted to bridge this gap by selecting coursework that combined business fundamentals with real estate finance, believing that formal education would provide the credibility necessary to overcome family preconceptions about my capabilities. My academic performance exceeded expectations, earning recognition from professors who praised my innovative approaches to complex financial modeling and strategic analysis. Professor Elena Vasquez, who taught advanced real estate finance, frequently used my case study analyses as examples for other students, noting my ability to identify risk factors and opportunity structures that more experienced professionals often overlooked. My research on emerging markets and demographic trends received attention from industry publications, establishing early recognition for insights that would later prove highly valuable in practical applications. However, when I shared these academic achievements with the Romano family leadership, the response revealed the depth of institutionalized bias that shaped their perceptions of my potential contributions. Uncle Vincent acknowledged my grades with the same enthusiasm he might show for a niece's piano recital, treating academic excellence as a pleasant personal accomplishment rather than evidence of professional capability. More troubling was the systematic way my ideas were appropriated without attribution when they proved valuable to family business discussions. During a holiday gathering in my sophomore year, I presented an analysis of demographic shifts in suburban markets that suggested significant opportunities for mixed-use developments targeted toward aging baby boomers. The research included detailed financial projections and market comparisons that demonstrated substantial profit potential for developments that combined retail, residential, and healthcare facilities. Uncle Vincent listened politely to my presentation, asked a few perfunctory questions, and then transitioned the conversation toward my cousins' internship experiences at regional development firms. 3 months later, Meridian Holdings announced a major strategic initiative focused on mixed-use developments for aging populations, presenting the concept as an innovative direction developed through comprehensive market research conducted by their internal team. The appropriation of my research represented more than simple theft of intellectual property. It demonstrated how the family power structure could absorb valuable insights while maintaining existing hierarchies, benefiting from my analytical capabilities without acknowledging their source, or creating opportunities for my advancement within the organization. This pattern intensified during my MBA studies at Harvard Business School, where I specialized in corporate finance and strategic management while developing expertise in sophisticated analytical tools and methodologies. My professors consistently ranked my work among the top tier of students, and several encouraged me to pursue consulting opportunities with major investment firms and development companies. The summer internship at Goldman Sachs provided particularly valuable validation of my professional capabilities. Senior analysts praised my ability to construct complex financial models, identify market inefficiencies, and assess risk factors with precision that exceeded expectations for someone with limited industry experience. The feedback emphasized qualities that should have positioned me as a strong candidate for significant responsibilities within any sophisticated real estate organization. But when I attempted to apply these skills and insights within the context of Meridian Holdings' strategic planning, the response remained consistent with established patterns of dismissal and marginalization. My financial models were acknowledged as interesting academic exercises, while my market analyses were characterized as theoretical concepts that lacked practical application in real-world business environments. The most egregious example of this systematic undervaluation occurred during my final year at Harvard Business School, when I developed a comprehensive strategic plan for entering emerging real estate markets through partnerships with institutional investors. The analysis included detailed financial projections, risk assessments, and implementation strategies that addressed every major concern typically raised during strategic planning processes. The plan represented months of research and analysis, incorporating insights from leading industry experts, case studies from successful market entries, and financial modeling that demonstrated substantial profit potential with carefully managed risk exposure. The presentation materials were professionally prepared and supported by data that exceeded the analytical rigor typically applied to Meridian Holdings' strategic initiatives. Uncle Vincent agreed to review the proposal during a family meeting scheduled specifically for this purpose, creating expectations that my comprehensive preparation and professional presentation would finally receive serious consideration. The meeting took place in the formal conference room at Meridian Holdings headquarters, with the full family leadership team present to evaluate what I hoped would be my breakthrough contribution to the family enterprise. The presentation proceeded smoothly for the first 15 minutes, with Uncle Vincent and other family members asking detailed questions about market assumptions, financial projections, and implementation timelines. The level of engagement suggested genuine interest in the strategic opportunities I had identified, and I began to believe that my years of preparation and professional development were finally yielding the recognition I had sought. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when Uncle Vincent concluded the questioning period and began his response to the proposal. Rather than addressing the substantive elements of my analysis, he focused on what he characterized as fundamental misconceptions about the nature of real estate development and the practical challenges facing family-controlled businesses in competitive markets. His critique systematically dismantled not the technical elements of my proposal, which he acknowledged were competently prepared, but the underlying premise that Meridian Holdings needed to pursue innovative strategies or alternative approaches to market development. The company had achieved success through conservative practices and established relationships, he argued, and dramatic departures from proven methodologies represented unnecessary risks that could jeopardize the family's accumulated wealth and market position. More damaging than his substantive objections was the condescending tone that characterized his entire response. Uncle Vincent spoke as if he were providing guidance to an enthusiastic but naive student who lacked understanding of practical business realities. He praised my academic preparation while dismissing the relevance of business school concepts to the specific challenges facing established real estate development firms. The conclusion of his remarks revealed the true nature of the barriers I faced within the family business structure. Uncle Vincent suggested that my talents would be better utilized in supporting roles that complemented the strategic direction already established by more experienced family members. He recommended that I consider pursuing opportunities in marketing, public relations, or project coordination, areas where my education and analytical skills could contribute value without challenging existing leadership responsibilities. The recommendation was presented as thoughtful career guidance, but its implications were unmistakable. Despite my superior educational credentials, demonstrated analytical capabilities, and innovative strategic thinking, my role within the family enterprise would remain subordinate to male relatives whose qualifications were substantially inferior to my own. The systematic exclusion was complete, institutionalized, and apparently permanent. The emotional impact of this rejection was profound, but more important was the strategic clarity it provided regarding my professional future. The Romano family business would never provide opportunities commensurate with my capabilities, regardless of my achievements or contributions. Success would require building independent platforms that could demonstrate my value without seeking approval from family members, whose perceptions were constrained by traditional prejudices and established power structures. This realization coincided with approaches from institutional investors who had learned about my strategic analysis capabilities through professional networks developed during my MBA program. Several investment groups expressed interest in partnering with knowledgeable developers who could identify and execute profitable projects in emerging markets, exactly the opportunity I had proposed to Meridian Holdings but had been rejected as too innovative and risky. The contrast was striking. While my own family dismissed my expertise as academically interesting but practically irrelevant, sophisticated institutional investors recognized the value of my analytical capabilities and strategic thinking. External validation provided confirmation that the problem was not my competence or market understanding, but rather the institutional biases and traditional limitations that constrained opportunity recognition within family-controlled businesses. The decision to establish Pinnacle Development Group emerged from this convergence of rejection and opportunity. If the Romano family business could not recognize or utilize my capabilities, I would create an independent platform that could demonstrate their value through measurable results and strategic success. The institutional investors provided both capital resources and market credibility, while my analytical skills and strategic insights would drive project identification and execution. The initial months of building Pinnacle Development Group required navigating complex emotional and professional challenges while maintaining family relationships that remained personally important despite their professional limitations. The decision to keep my business activities confidential was motivated by strategic considerations rather than deception. Premature disclosure could create unnecessary complications while the company was establishing market credibility and building its portfolio of successful projects. More importantly, I wanted to prove my capabilities through independent achievement rather than seeking acknowledgement or support from family members who had consistently demonstrated their inability to recognize or value my contributions. Success would be measured through client satisfaction, investment returns, and market recognition, rather than family approval or internal advancement within established hierarchies. The early success of Pinnacle Development Group validated this strategic approach, while revealing the extent to which my capabilities had been underestimated and underutilized within the Romano family business context. Projects that generated substantial returns for institutional investors demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking and market analysis that had been dismissed as impractical when presented to Meridian Holdings leadership. As Pinnacle Development Group's reputation and portfolio expanded, the irony of the situation became increasingly apparent. The expertise that had been systematically devalued within my own family's business was generating recognition and profits in external markets, where results mattered more than relationships or traditional prejudices. Independent validation provided perspective on just how significantly the Romano family had underestimated my potential contributions to their continued success. The systematic undervaluation I had experienced was not unique to my family's business or personal circumstances. Research conducted during my academic studies had revealed similar patterns in family-controlled enterprises across multiple industries, where traditional hierarchies and gender expectations often prevented optimal utilization of available talent and expertise. The problem was structural rather than personal, but its impact on individual careers and organizational performance was substantial and measurable. Understanding the systematic nature of these barriers provided both personal vindication and strategic insight for building alternative pathways to professional success. The same analytical capabilities that had been dismissed within traditional family business structures proved highly valuable in competitive markets where performance determined opportunity rather than inherited position or established relationships. This foundation would prove crucial as circumstances developed that would ultimately force a confrontation between my independent success and my family's continued assumptions about my capabilities and contributions. The systematic undervaluation that had driven me to seek external validation was about to collide with the reality of my achievements in ways that none of us could have anticipated. The first signs of trouble at Meridian Holdings emerged during the third quarter financial review, though the full magnitude of the crisis would not become apparent until several months later. What began as minor discrepancies in revenue projections and client retention rates gradually escalated into a comprehensive threat to the company's financial stability and market position, creating exactly the kind of strategic challenge that would ultimately expose the limitations of traditional leadership approaches and conservative business practices. Uncle Vincent had built Meridian Holdings through careful relationship management and proven methodologies that had sustained consistent growth over 2 decades. The company's success rested on long-term partnerships with established clients who valued reliability and conservative approaches to project development and property management. This strategy had generated substantial profits while minimizing risk exposure, creating a business model that appeared sustainable and predictable. However, the real estate industry was experiencing fundamental shifts that threatened companies unwilling or unable to adapt to changing market conditions and evolving client expectations. Demographic trends, technological innovations, and environmental regulations were creating new requirements for property development that exceeded the capabilities of traditional approaches. Companies that failed to recognize these changes faced increasing competitive pressure and declining market relevance. The first major warning sign appeared when Meridian Holdings lost a significant contract with Sterling Industries, a manufacturing company that had been a cornerstone client for over 15 years. Sterling's decision to terminate their relationship came after months of negotiations regarding sustainable development practices and energy efficiency standards that Meridian Holdings could not accommodate within their existing project management frameworks. Sterling's Chief Operating Officer Margaret Chen explained their decision during a tense final meeting with Uncle Vincent and the senior management team. The company required development partners who could integrate advanced environmental technologies, implement comprehensive sustainability programs, and achieve LEED certification standards that exceeded basic regulatory compliance. These requirements represented industry best practices that forward-thinking development firms had been incorporating for several years, but Meridian Holdings lacked the expertise and technological capabilities necessary to meet these evolving standards. Uncle Vincent's response to Sterling's requirements revealed the depth of resistance to innovation that characterized Meridian Holdings' leadership approach. Rather than acknowledging the legitimacy of their concerns and exploring solutions that could address their needs, he dismissed their requirements as unnecessary complications that added cost without providing meaningful value. His argument emphasized traditional approaches that had proven successful in the past, suggesting that Sterling's focus on environmental considerations represented a temporary trend rather than a permanent shift in industry standards. This dismissive attitude toward client concerns and market evolution reflected broader strategic limitations that would prove increasingly problematic as other clients began expressing similar requirements and expectations. The real estate industry was experiencing consolidation and specialization that favored companies capable of providing sophisticated services and innovative solutions rather than basic development and management capabilities. The loss of Sterling Industries created immediate financial pressure, as their contracts had represented approximately 18% of Meridian Holdings' annual revenue. More concerning was the symbolic impact of losing a long-term client whose departure suggested fundamental problems with the company's ability to adapt to changing market conditions and client expectations. Industry observers began questioning whether Meridian Holdings possessed the strategic vision and operational capabilities necessary to remain competitive in evolving markets. The financial impact became more severe when 2 additional major clients, Harrison Manufacturing and Coastal Logistics, announced their intention to review their development partnerships and consider alternative providers who could offer more comprehensive services and innovative approaches to property development. Both companies cited concerns about Meridian Holdings' capacity to deliver projects that met evolving regulatory requirements and incorporated advanced technological systems. Harrison Manufacturing specifically requested proposals for smart building technologies, automated systems integration, and comprehensive data analytics capabilities that could optimize operational efficiency and reduce long-term maintenance costs. These requirements represented standard expectations among sophisticated corporate clients. But Meridian Holdings lacked the technical expertise and vendor relationships necessary to provide competitive proposals. Coastal Logistics focused on supply chain optimization and logistics integration that required deep understanding of emerging trends in e-commerce, automated fulfillment systems, and last-mile delivery infrastructure. Their development needs exceeded traditional construction and property management services, requiring strategic consulting and technological integration that positioned real estate development within broader operational strategies. Uncle Vincent's response to these client challenges demonstrated how traditional leadership approaches could become liabilities when market conditions demanded innovation and adaptation. Rather than acknowledging the legitimacy of client requirements and investing in capabilities that could address their needs, he characterized their expectations as unreasonable departures from established industry practices. His strategy involved attempting to convince clients that their requirements were unnecessarily complex, and that traditional approaches would provide superior long-term value through proven reliability and cost-effectiveness. This approach reflected genuine belief that market trends toward technological integration and environmental responsibility represented temporary fluctuations rather than permanent shifts in industry standards and client expectations. The consequences of this strategic miscalculation became apparent as client relationships deteriorated and competitive pressures intensified. Companies that had partnered with Meridian Holdings for decades began exploring alternative providers who could offer more comprehensive services and innovative solutions. The reputation for reliability and conservative practices that had previously attracted clients was becoming a liability in markets that valued adaptability and forward-thinking approaches. The crisis deepened when internal financial analysis revealed that client retention rates had declined significantly over the previous 18 months, with revenue projections falling short of targets by increasingly substantial margins. The accounting department's quarterly reports showed systematic erosion of profit margins as the company struggled to maintain competitive pricing while lacking the operational efficiencies and technological capabilities that enabled more innovative competitors to deliver superior value at lower costs. Anthony and Michael Romano, who held senior positions within the company hierarchy, began expressing concerns about the strategic direction and leadership decisions that had contributed to these deteriorating conditions. Their perspectives reflected generational differences in approach to business development and client relationship management, though their proposed solutions remained constrained by limited understanding of market dynamics and technological trends. Anthony, who served as regional development manager, advocated for aggressive pricing strategies and expanded marketing efforts that could help the company retain existing clients and attract new business through competitive bidding processes. His approach emphasized traditional sales techniques and relationship building rather than fundamental improvements in service capabilities or operational innovations. Michael, who held the position of Director of Client Relations, recommended organizational restructuring and personnel changes that could reduce operational costs while improving responsiveness to client concerns. His proposals focused on efficiency improvements within existing frameworks rather than strategic investments in new capabilities that could address evolving market requirements. Both approaches reflected recognition that Meridian Holdings faced serious competitive challenges, but neither addressed the fundamental strategic limitations that prevented the company from adapting to changing market conditions and client expectations. The proposed solutions represented tactical adjustments rather than the comprehensive transformation that would be necessary to restore the company's competitive position and financial performance. Uncle Vincent's resistance to acknowledging the severity of the crisis became increasingly problematic as market conditions continued deteriorating and competitive pressures intensified. His insistence that traditional approaches would eventually prove superior to innovative alternatives prevented serious consideration of strategic changes that could address fundamental operational and technological limitations. This situation reached a critical point when Pinnacle Development Group emerged as a significant competitive threat, securing several major contracts with clients who had previously worked exclusively with established firms like Meridian Holdings. Industry publications began featuring Pinnacle's innovative approaches to sustainable development, technological integration, and client service excellence, positioning the company as a representative of emerging best practices in real estate development. What made Pinnacle's success particularly troubling for Meridian Holdings was the company's ability to deliver exactly the kind of sophisticated services and innovative solutions that their former clients had been requesting. Projects completed by Pinnacle consistently exceeded client expectations while achieving superior financial performance and environmental standards. demonstrating that the requirements dismissed by Uncle Vincent as unreasonable were entirely achievable with appropriate expertise and strategic focus. The contrast between Meridian Holdings' declining performance and Pinnacle Development Group's rapid success created industry speculation about whether traditional family-controlled businesses possessed the agility and innovation capacity necessary to compete effectively in evolving markets. This narrative threatened not only Meridian Holdings' financial performance but also the family's reputation and social standing within business and social communities. The crisis intensified when Harrison Manufacturing announced their decision to terminate their relationship with Meridian Holdings and award their major expansion project to Pinnacle Development Group. The contract, worth over $40 million, represented the largest single project loss in Meridian Holdings' history and provided unmistakable evidence that their competitive position had deteriorated beyond the point where incremental adjustments could restore market confidence. Harrison's public statement regarding their decision emphasized Pinnacle's superior capabilities in technological integration, environmental sustainability, and strategic consulting services that could optimize their operational efficiency and long-term competitiveness. The announcement specifically contrasted Pinnacle's innovative approaches with what they characterized as outdated methodologies that failed to address contemporary business requirements. This public critique of Meridian Holdings' capabilities created reputational damage that extended beyond the immediate financial impact of losing the Harrison contract. Other potential clients began questioning whether the company possessed the strategic vision and operational capabilities necessary to support their development needs, creating additional pressure on an already deteriorating competitive position. The accumulating evidence of strategic failure and competitive disadvantage created internal tensions within the Romano family leadership that had previously been suppressed by successful financial performance and market stability. Family members who had supported Uncle Vincent's conservative approach began questioning whether fundamental changes in leadership and strategy might be necessary to preserve the company's viability and the family's accumulated wealth. These internal discussions occurred against the backdrop of industry analysis suggesting that Meridian Holdings faced an existential crisis that threatened not only their market position but their survival as an independent enterprise. The combination of declining client retention, competitive pressure from innovative firms like Pinnacle Development Group, and fundamental strategic limitations created a perfect storm that demanded immediate and comprehensive response. The stage was set for a family meeting that would force confrontation with these accumulating challenges while testing the leadership approaches and strategic assumptions that had guided Meridian Holdings for decades. The crisis brewing within the company would ultimately create conditions that made my revelation not just dramatic but essential for understanding how traditional biases and systematic undervaluation had contributed to their current predicament. The full scope of Meridian Holdings' crisis became clear to me during a routine industry conference in Boston, where I was representing Pinnacle Development Group at a panel discussion on sustainable urban development. The conference brought together leading real estate professionals, institutional investors, and policymakers to discuss emerging trends and best practices in commercial property development. My participation as a panelist represented significant recognition for Pinnacle's innovative approaches and successful project portfolio. During the networking reception following my presentation, I encountered several former clients of Meridian Holdings who approached me with unsolicited commentary about the company's declining performance and competitive position. These conversations revealed details about my family's business challenges that extended far beyond what I had observed through industry publications and general market intelligence. Patricia Williams, the Chief Development Officer at Sterling Industries, provided particularly valuable insights during our conversation about sustainable development trends. She explained that her company's decision to terminate their relationship with Meridian Holdings had been driven not only by technical limitations, but by what she characterized as fundamental resistance to understanding evolving client needs and market requirements. Patricia described a series of meetings with Uncle Vincent and his senior team where Sterling had attempted to explain their operational requirements for energy-efficient facilities, advanced building management systems, and comprehensive environmental certification programs. Rather than engaging constructively with these requirements, Meridian Holdings' leadership had consistently dismissed them as unnecessary complications that added cost without providing meaningful value. The conversation revealed that Sterling had approached multiple development firms before selecting Pinnacle Development Group as their new strategic partner. Patricia praised Pinnacle's comprehensive understanding of contemporary business requirements and innovative approaches to integrating operational efficiency with environmental responsibility. She specifically mentioned the sophisticated financial modeling and strategic consulting services that had convinced Sterling's board of directors to approve the partnership. The irony of this praise was profound, as Patricia was unknowingly describing my work and expertise while explaining why my own family's company had been inadequate for their needs. The analytical capabilities and strategic thinking that Uncle Vincent had dismissed as impractical theoretical concepts were exactly what sophisticated clients required from their development partners. Similar conversations throughout the conference revealed a consistent pattern of client dissatisfaction with Meridian Holdings' conservative approach and limited capabilities. Robert Chen from Harrison Manufacturing described their frustration with what he characterized as outdated thinking and resistance to innovation that prevented meaningful collaboration on complex development projects. Maria Rodriguez from Coastal Logistics explained their decision to explore alternative partnerships based on Meridian Holdings' inability to provide comprehensive supply chain optimization and technological integration services. Each conversation reinforced my understanding that the crisis facing Meridian Holdings was not simply financial but strategic and cultural. The company's traditional approaches and conservative methodologies were becoming increasingly irrelevant in markets that demanded innovation, technological sophistication, and comprehensive service capabilities. The systematic rejection of new ideas and resistance to strategic adaptation had created fundamental competitive disadvantages that threatened the company's long-term viability. More troubling was the realization that many of these client concerns could have been addressed if Uncle Vincent and his leadership team had been willing to consider the insights and recommendations I had presented during my attempts to contribute to the family business. The strategic plan I had developed during my final year at Harvard Business School included specific proposals for technological integration, environmental sustainability programs, and expanded service offerings that directly addressed the requirements these clients were seeking. The financial modeling and market analysis I had prepared demonstrated that investing in these capabilities would generate substantial returns while positioning Meridian Holdings for continued growth in evolving markets. The recommendations had been based on comprehensive research and successful case studies from other development firms that had achieved competitive advantages through strategic innovation and operational excellence. The rejection of my proposals now appeared not only short-sighted but catastrophically damaging to the family business and the financial security of hundreds of employees who depended on Meridian Holdings for their livelihoods. The systematic undervaluation of my expertise had prevented the company from adapting to market changes that I had identified and analyzed months before they became critical competitive disadvantages. This recognition created a complex emotional response that combined vindication with genuine concern for my family's welfare and the broader impact of Meridian Holdings' declining performance. While my professional success with Pinnacle Development Group provided personal satisfaction and financial security, I felt increasing responsibility for the consequences of remaining silent about my identity and capabilities. The moral dimensions of the situation became particularly clear when I learned that several Meridian Holdings employees had been terminated due to declining revenue and reduced project activity. These job losses affected dedicated professionals who had contributed years of service to the company but were suffering consequences of strategic decisions beyond their control or influence. The human cost of leadership failures extended far beyond the Romano family to impact entire communities that depended on stable employment and economic opportunity. The conference also provided valuable intelligence about competitive dynamics within the regional real estate development industry. Pinnacle Development Group's rapid growth and market success had attracted attention from established firms seeking to understand how a relatively new company could achieve such remarkable results in challenging market conditions. Industry analysts were beginning to recognize Pinnacle as a significant competitive threat to traditional development firms that relied on established relationships rather than innovative capabilities. Several conference participants approached me with partnership proposals and strategic alliance opportunities that reflected Pinnacle's growing reputation and market influence. These discussions revealed that the company was positioned to expand significantly beyond its current project portfolio, potentially becoming a dominant force in sustainable development and technological integration services across multiple regional markets. The contrast between Pinnacle's ascending trajectory and Meridian Holdings' declining performance created industry speculation about whether traditional family-controlled businesses possess the agility and innovation capacity necessary to compete effectively in contemporary markets. This narrative threatened not only my family's financial interests, but their social standing and professional reputation within business communities where respect and influence had been carefully cultivated over decades. The strategic implications of this competitive dynamic became clear as I analyzed the specific capabilities that differentiated Pinnacle Development Group from established competitors like Meridian Holdings. The company's success resulted directly from innovative approaches, technological expertise, and comprehensive service offerings that I had originally proposed for implementation within the family business. The systematic rejection of these strategies had created opportunities for external competitors, while weakening Meridian Holdings' market position. The realization that I possessed not only the insights necessary to understand Meridian Holdings' crisis, but also the proven solutions that could address their competitive disadvantages, created a profound sense of responsibility for the outcome of their strategic challenges. My continued silence about Pinnacle's ownership and my role in developing competitive alternatives to traditional approaches was becoming increasingly difficult to justify ethically. The situation was further complicated by emerging opportunities for Pinnacle Development Group to expand its market presence through strategic acquisitions and partnerships with struggling development firms. Several industry contacts had suggested that Pinnacle's financial resources and operational capabilities positioned the company to acquire distressed competitors and integrate their assets into a larger, more efficient organization. The prospect of Pinnacle Development Group potentially acquiring struggling development firms created obvious implications for Meridian Holdings' future, particularly if their financial performance continued deteriorating and their competitive position remained weak. The irony that my own company might eventually acquire my family's business represented the ultimate vindication of capabilities that had been systematically undervalued and dismissed for years. However, the emotional complexity of this potential outcome required careful consideration of family relationships and personal values that extended beyond professional success and financial achievement. While acquiring Meridian Holdings would represent comprehensive validation of my strategic vision and business capabilities, it would also create permanent changes in family dynamics that might prove more costly than beneficial in human terms. The conference experience also provided perspective on the broader implications of systematic undervaluation and exclusion within family-controlled businesses. Conversations with other successful entrepreneurs revealed similar patterns of discrimination and missed opportunities that resulted from traditional hierarchies and prejudiced assumptions about capabilities and potential contributions. These discussions suggested that my experience with the Romano family business was representative of broader structural problems that prevented optimal utilization of available talent and expertise within family enterprises. The systematic exclusion of qualified individuals based on gender, age, or position within family hierarchies created competitive disadvantages that became increasingly problematic as market conditions demanded innovation and adaptability. The recognition that my individual experience reflected broader social and economic problems provided additional motivation for using my success with Pinnacle Development Group to create positive change that extended beyond personal vindication or financial achievement. The platform and influence I had developed through independent success could potentially address systematic barriers that prevented other talented individuals from contributing their capabilities to family businesses and traditional organizations. The moral weight of this responsibility became particularly apparent as I considered the upcoming quarterly family meeting where Meridian Holdings' crisis would be discussed and strategic responses would be determined. My knowledge of the company's challenges, understanding of competitive dynamics, and proven ability to deliver innovative solutions positioned me uniquely to contribute valuable insights that could potentially reverse their declining trajectory. The question was whether I possessed the courage to step forward with information that would expose years of systematic undervaluation while simultaneously revealing the extent to which my independent success had contributed to their competitive disadvantages. The revelation would require acknowledging not only my ownership of Pinnacle Development Group but also the strategic implications of their decision to dismiss my expertise and exclude me from meaningful participation in family business decisions. The stakes extended far beyond personal relationships to include the financial security of hundreds of employees, the preservation of a business enterprise that represented 3 generations of family dedication and achievement, and the broader implications for how family-controlled organizations recognized and utilized available talent and expertise. The moment of recognition had arrived, forcing me to confront the reality that my continued silence might prevent solutions that could save Meridian Holdings, while my revelation might create opportunities for redemption and transformation that benefited everyone involved in the crisis. The invisible architect of their primary competitive threat was positioned to become their potential savior, if she possessed the courage to step into the light and claim responsibility for both problems and solutions that had emerged from years of systematic exclusion and undervaluation. The decision to attend the emergency family meeting required 3 weeks of careful preparation and profound soul-searching that tested every assumption I had developed about professional success, family loyalty, and moral responsibility. The invitation arrived through my father, who explained that Uncle Vincent had called for an urgent gathering to address what he described as the most serious crisis in Meridian Holdings' corporate history. The formal tone of the invitation and the unprecedented inclusion of extended family members suggested that the situation had deteriorated beyond normal business challenges to threaten the fundamental survival of the enterprise. My initial inclination was to decline participation, maintaining the protective distance I had established between my independent success and the family dynamics that had consistently undervalued my contributions. The prospect of subjecting myself to another session of systematic dismissal and condescending guidance held little appeal, particularly when my professional life with Pinnacle Development Group provided comprehensive validation of capabilities that my family remained unable to recognize or appreciate. However, the moral complexity of the situation prevented easy resolution of this internal conflict. The intelligence I had gathered about Meridian Holdings' declining performance revealed that the crisis extended far beyond financial challenges to encompass fundamental strategic failures that threatened hundreds of jobs and the accumulated wealth of 3 generations. The human cost of continued deterioration included not only Romano family members, but dedicated employees whose livelihoods depended on the company's ability to adapt and survive in increasingly competitive markets. The preparation process required developing a comprehensive strategy that could address multiple objectives simultaneously. The primary goal was to provide information and insights that could help Meridian Holdings address their competitive disadvantages and restore financial stability. However, the revelation of my ownership of Pinnacle Development Group would necessarily expose years of systematic undervaluation and create dramatic shifts in family power dynamics that required careful navigation. The strategic challenge involved determining how to present information that would be credible and actionable, while managing the emotional and relational consequences of revealing my true professional accomplishments. The family's established patterns of dismissing my contributions suggested that direct confrontation might prove counterproductive, while indirect approaches might fail to communicate the urgency and scope of solutions I could provide. The solution emerged through careful analysis of the family business culture and decision-making processes that had characterized Meridian Holdings throughout my experience with the organization. Uncle Vincent's leadership style emphasized concrete evidence and measurable results rather than theoretical concepts or untested innovations. The key to gaining credibility would be demonstrating proven success and quantifiable achievements, rather than presenting additional proposals for consideration. The preparation involved organizing comprehensive documentation of Pinnacle Development Group's performance metrics, client relationships, and strategic capabilities that could illustrate the practical value of approaches that Meridian Holdings had previously dismissed. The materials needed to demonstrate not only financial success but also operational excellence and innovative methodologies that directly addressed the competitive challenges facing the family business. The portfolio documentation required careful attention to maintaining client confidentiality while providing sufficient detail to establish credibility and demonstrate capabilities. The case studies selected for presentation illustrated successful project outcomes that exceeded client expectations while achieving superior financial performance and environmental standards. Each example was chosen to address specific weaknesses in Meridian Holdings, current service offerings, and strategic positioning. The financial analysis component of the presentation required developing comparative assessments that could illustrate the quantitative impact of strategic innovations and operational improvements. The data demonstrated that companies implementing advanced sustainability programs, technological integration systems, and comprehensive consulting services achieved measurably superior results in client retention, profit margins, and market positioning compared to firms maintaining traditional approaches. The psychological preparation for this confrontation proved more challenging than the technical aspects of organizing evidence and developing presentation materials. The prospect of exposing myself to potential ridicule or dismissal required overcoming years of conditioning that had taught me to expect rejection and marginalization within family business contexts. The emotional risk of comprehensive vulnerability in front of family members who had consistently demonstrated their inability to recognize my worth created anxiety that threatened to undermine my resolve. However, the moral imperative to act became increasingly clear as I considered the broader implications of remaining silent. The systematic undervaluation I had experienced was not merely a personal injustice, but a strategic failure that had prevented Meridian Holdings from adapting to market changes and maintaining competitive viability. My continued silence would perpetuate these problems while potentially allowing preventable harm to affect innocent employees and family members who depended on the company's success. The decision to reveal my ownership of Pinnacle Development Group represented more than personal vindication or professional recognition. The disclosure would provide Meridian Holdings with access to proven solutions that could address their competitive disadvantages while demonstrating the value of perspectives and capabilities that had been systematically excluded from strategic planning processes. The revelation offered potential redemption for both personal relationships and business outcomes. The strategic timing of this disclosure required consideration of family dynamics and decision-making processes that could maximize the impact of information while minimizing defensive reactions that might prevent constructive engagement. The crisis facing Meridian Holdings had created conditions where traditional approaches and established hierarchies were demonstrably inadequate, potentially creating openness to alternative perspectives and innovative solutions that would have been rejected under normal circumstances. The preparation also involved anticipating potential responses and developing strategies for addressing various scenarios that might emerge during the family meeting. Uncle Vincent's personality and leadership style suggested that he might initially respond to the revelation with skepticism or defensiveness, particularly given the implications for his own strategic judgment and decision-making competence. The presentation needed to provide opportunities for constructive engagement rather than personal confrontation. The documentation of Meridian Holdings' competitive disadvantages required careful research and analysis that could demonstrate the scope of strategic challenges without creating unnecessary embarrassment or defensiveness among family leadership. The materials focused on market trends, client requirements, and competitive dynamics rather than personal criticisms or individual failures, providing foundation for constructive discussion about solutions rather than blame assignment. The development of specific recommendations for addressing Meridian Holdings' crisis required integrating insights from Pinnacle Development Group's successful methodologies with realistic assessments of the family company's existing capabilities and resources. The proposals needed to be ambitious enough to address fundamental competitive disadvantages while remaining practical and achievable within the context of organizational constraints and cultural limitations. The recommendations encompassed technological integration programs that could modernize Meridian Holdings' operational capabilities, sustainability initiatives that could address evolving client requirements and regulatory standards, expanded service offerings that could differentiate the company from traditional competitors, and strategic partnerships that could provide access to specialized expertise and resources. Each recommendation was supported by financial projections and implementation timelines that demonstrated feasibility and potential returns. The personal preparation for this confrontation required developing emotional resilience and communication strategies that could maintain focus on constructive outcomes despite potential criticism, dismissal, or defensive reactions from family members. The goal was to provide valuable information and strategic options rather than seeking personal vindication or acknowledgement of past injustices, though both outcomes might emerge naturally from successful presentation of evidence and recommendations. The rehearsal process involved practicing presentation delivery and response strategies that could maintain professional composure while addressing various challenging scenarios. The preparation emphasized clear communication of complex concepts, patient explanation of technical details, and persistent focus on solutions rather than problems or past mistakes. The approach needed to demonstrate competence and leadership while respecting family relationships and established hierarchies. The morning of the family meeting arrived with a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that reflected the magnitude of potential consequences for both personal relationships and business outcomes. The presentation materials were organized professionally and comprehensively, providing multiple levels of detail that could accommodate different levels of technical interest and strategic engagement from family members, with varying backgrounds and responsibilities. The decision to wear professional business attire, rather than the casual clothing typically expected at family gatherings, represented a deliberate choice to establish credibility and signal the seriousness of information I would be presenting. The visual presentation needed to communicate competence and authority while remaining respectful of family relationships and establish social dynamics. The drive to the Meridian Holdings headquarters provided final opportunities for mental preparation and strategic review of key messages and supporting evidence. The presentation needed to accomplish multiple objectives within a limited time frame, while maintaining family relationships and creating opportunities for constructive collaboration. The success of this revelation would determine not only the future of Meridian Holdings, but also the trajectory of relationships that had shaped my personal and professional development throughout my adult life. The stakes extended far beyond personal vindication to encompass the preservation of a business enterprise that represented generations of family dedication and achievement, the financial security of hundreds of employees who depended on the company's success, and the broader implications for how family-controlled organizations could recognize and utilize available talent and expertise. The moment of truth was approaching, requiring courage that extended beyond professional confidence to encompass personal vulnerability and emotional risk. The invisible architect of Meridian Holdings' primary competitive threat was preparing to step into the light and assume responsibility for both creating problems and providing solutions that could transform the crisis into opportunities for redemption and renewal. The success of this approach would determine whether systematic undervaluation and exclusion could be overcome through demonstrated competence and strategic value, or whether established prejudices and traditional hierarchies would prevent recognition of solutions that could save the family enterprise. The Meridian Holdings conference room had never felt more imposing than it did that Tuesday morning when I arrived precisely 15 minutes before the scheduled meeting time. The mahogany-paneled walls bore witness to decades of strategic decisions that had built and sustained the Romano family empire, while oil portraits of my grandfather and great-grandfather observed the proceedings with expressions that seemed to demand reverence for traditional approaches and established hierarchies. The leather-bound chairs around the massive oval table had been arranged in their customary configuration, with Uncle Vincent's position at the head commanding clear authority over all other participants. The early arrival provided an opportunity to organize my presentation materials while observing family members as they entered the conference room, with expressions that ranged from curiosity to concern about the unprecedented urgency of this gathering. My father appeared particularly troubled, having received limited information about the scope of challenges facing the company beyond general references to declining revenue and competitive pressures. My cousins Anthony and Michael entered together, engaged in hushed conversation that suggested they possessed more detailed knowledge about the crisis than other family members. Uncle Vincent arrived precisely at the scheduled time, carrying himself with the dignified bearing that had characterized his leadership throughout his tenure as chief executive officer. However, his usual confidence appeared somewhat diminished by the weight of circumstances that had necessitated this emergency gathering. The financial documents and strategic analyses he placed on the table suggested that the presentation would include comprehensive disclosure of problems that had been carefully managed and minimized during previous family meetings. The formal commencement of the meeting followed established protocols that reinforced traditional hierarchies while creating an atmosphere of serious deliberation appropriate to the magnitude of challenges under discussion. Uncle Vincent opened with acknowledgement of the unprecedented nature of this gathering and expressions of appreciation for family member participation, despite the short notice and serious subject matter, requiring immediate attention and collective wisdom. The initial presentation of financial data revealed the extent of Meridian Holdings' deteriorating performance with stark clarity that left no room for optimistic interpretation or strategic minimization. Revenue projections for the current fiscal year showed significant shortfalls compared to budgeted expectations, while client retention metrics demonstrated systematic erosion of relationships that had provided stability and predictability for decades. The profit margin analysis revealed that competitive pressures and operational inefficiencies had reduced profitability to levels that threatened the company's ability to maintain current staffing and operational capacity. The most sobering element of Uncle Vincent's presentation involved detailed analysis of competitive threats that had emerged over the previous 18 months. Pinnacle Development Group occupied prominent position in this assessment, with Uncle Vincent describing the company as representing exactly the kind of innovative approach and comprehensive service offering that traditional development firms were struggling to match. His praise for Pinnacle's capabilities and strategic positioning created profound irony, as family members unknowingly celebrated the success of the enterprise I had built, while being excluded from meaningful participation in their own family business. Uncle Vincent's analysis of competitive dynamics revealed sophisticated understanding of market trends and client requirements that differed dramatically from his previous dismissal of innovation and resistance to strategic adaptation. The crisis had apparently forced recognition that traditional approaches were inadequate for contemporary market conditions, though this acknowledgement came only after substantial damage had been inflicted on the company's competitive position and financial performance. The discussion of potential solutions revealed the limitations of strategic thinking within the current leadership structure. Anthony proposed aggressive pricing strategies and expanded marketing efforts that reflected traditional sales approaches rather than fundamental improvements in service capabilities or operational innovations. Michael recommended organizational restructuring and cost reduction measures that could improve short-term financial performance without addressing the underlying competitive disadvantages that had created the crisis. Both proposals demonstrated recognition that serious action was required, but neither addressed the technological integration, sustainability programs, or comprehensive consulting services that sophisticated clients were demanding from their development partners. The strategic responses remained constrained by conventional thinking and established methodologies, rather than embracing the innovative approaches that had enabled competitors like Pinnacle Development Group to achieve superior results. As the discussion proceeded, I recognized that the moment for intervention had arrived. The family leadership had acknowledged the severity of their crisis and demonstrated openness to strategic alternatives that would have been rejected under normal circumstances. The comprehensive analysis they had presented created foundation for constructive engagement about solutions, rather than defensive justification of established approaches. I requested permission to contribute to the strategic discussion, explaining that my external perspective and industry knowledge might provide valuable insights about competitive dynamics and potential solutions. The request created momentary surprise among family members who were unaccustomed to my participation in strategic planning processes. But Uncle Vincent's recognition of the crisis severity led him to welcome any potentially valuable contributions to their deliberations. The initial phase of my presentation focused on market analysis and competitive assessment that could establish credibility without immediately revealing my ownership of Pinnacle Development Group. I explained how industry trends toward sustainability, technological integration, and comprehensive consulting services reflected fundamental shifts in client expectations rather than temporary market fluctuations. The analysis demonstrated that companies successfully adapting to these trends achieved measurably superior results in client retention, profit margins, and market positioning compared to firms maintaining traditional approaches. The technical sophistication of my analysis immediately captured the attention of family members who had not previously recognized my expertise in strategic planning and market assessment. The financial modeling and competitive intelligence I presented exceeded the analytical rigor typically applied to Meridian Holdings' strategic initiatives, while providing actionable insights about specific steps that could address their competitive disadvantages. Uncle Vincent's response revealed the beginning of fundamental reassessment of my capabilities and potential contributions to family business challenges. His questions demonstrated genuine interest in my analytical methodology and strategic recommendations rather than the perfunctory acknowledgement that had characterized previous interactions. The crisis had created conditions where demonstrated competence could overcome established prejudices and traditional limitations. The presentation of specific recommendations for addressing Meridian Holdings' competitive disadvantages required careful balance between ambition and practical feasibility. I proposed technological integration programs that could modernize operational capabilities, sustainability initiatives that could address evolving client requirements, expanded service offerings that could differentiate the company from traditional competitors, and strategic partnerships that could provide access to specialized expertise and resources. Each recommendation was supported by detailed financial projections and implementation timelines that demonstrated both potential returns and practical achievability within the context of organizational constraints. The analysis included case studies from successful implementations at other development firms, providing evidence that innovative approaches could generate substantial competitive advantages when properly executed with appropriate resources and strategic commitment. The family's response to these recommendations revealed a profound shift in their perception of my analytical capabilities and strategic thinking. Anthony asked detailed questions about implementation costs and timeline requirements that suggested serious consideration rather than polite dismissal. Michael inquired about potential partnerships and vendor relationships that could support technological integration initiatives. My father expressed surprise at the sophistication of my understanding regarding operational challenges and strategic alternatives. Most significantly, Uncle Vincent acknowledged that my recommendations addressed fundamental problems he had identified but had been unable to resolve through conventional approaches. His admission represented unprecedented recognition of my strategic insights and analytical capabilities, though the full extent of my expertise and business accomplishments remained undisclosed pending the appropriate moment for complete revelation. The discussion of strategic partnerships created natural opportunity to introduce information about Pinnacle Development Group without immediately revealing my ownership of the company. I explained how innovative development firms were achieving superior results through collaborative approaches that combined specialized expertise with comprehensive service offerings. The description of Pinnacle's capabilities and strategic positioning provided foundation for eventual disclosure while establishing credibility for the company's proven track record and market success. The family's reaction to information about Pinnacle Development Group revealed both admiration for the company's achievements and frustration about their inability to compete effectively against such sophisticated competition. Uncle Vincent expressed particular interest in understanding how Pinnacle had achieved such rapid market penetration and client success in industries where Meridian Holdings had previously maintained competitive advantages. The conversation created perfect opportunity for the revelation that would transform the family meeting from strategic planning session into moment of profound recognition and reassessment. The groundwork had been established through demonstration of my analytical capabilities, presentation of actionable solutions, and acknowledgement of Pinnacle Development Group's superior competitive position. The family had unknowingly validated both my expertise and my company's success, while expressing genuine interest in understanding how to achieve similar results. The moment of truth was approaching, requiring final preparation for disclosure that would expose years of systematic undervaluation while simultaneously providing solutions that could save the family business. The gradual breakthrough in family perceptions had created foundation for constructive engagement. But the complete revelation would test whether demonstrated competence could overcome established hierarchies and traditional prejudices that had prevented recognition of my capabilities throughout my professional development. The invisible architect of their primary competitive threat was preparing to step fully into the light and assume responsibility for both creating challenges and providing solutions that could transform crisis into opportunity for redemption and renewal. The success of this complete disclosure would determine whether the Romano family could recognize and embrace the value that had been systematically excluded from their strategic planning and business development processes. The silence that followed my revelation lasted precisely 17 seconds, though it felt like an eternity as I watched the expressions of my family members shift from confusion to recognition to complete shock. Uncle Vincent's face underwent a transformation that began with furrowed concentration as he processed my words, followed by widening eyes as the implications became clear, and finally settling into an expression of disbelief that bordered on denial. "Isabella, I need you to repeat what you just said," Uncle Vincent requested, his voice carrying the careful control of someone attempting to maintain composure while his fundamental understanding of reality was being challenged. "Did you just claim that you own Pinnacle Development Group?" The weight of this moment represented the culmination of years of preparation, months of strategic planning, and decades of systematic undervaluation that had driven me to build independent success while my family remained oblivious to my capabilities. The revelation would either vindicate my belief that competence could overcome prejudice, or confirm that traditional hierarchies were too entrenched to accommodate evidence that challenged established assumptions about worth and capability. Yes, Uncle Vincent, I am the founder and sole owner of Pinnacle Development Group. I established the company 18 months ago after completing my MBA at Harvard Business School and securing initial funding from institutional investors who recognized the market opportunity for innovative development services. I stated clearly, maintaining professional composure, despite the emotional intensity of finally acknowledging my achievement to family members who had consistently dismissed my potential. The documentation I placed on the conference table included corporate registration papers, financial statements, client contracts, and performance metrics that provided comprehensive evidence of Pinnacle Development Group's success and my role as its strategic leader. The materials demonstrated not only ownership but active management of every aspect of the business, from initial concept development through project execution and client relationship management. Anthony was the first to speak, his voice reflecting a mixture of confusion and defensive incredulity. This cannot be accurate, Isabella. Pinnacle Development Group has secured major contracts with clients who terminated relationships with our company. You are suggesting that our own family member has been competing against us while attending family gatherings, where we discussed our business challenges. His observation captured the complex moral dimensions of my situation, while revealing the cognitive dissonance that my revelation had created within established family narratives. The idea that their systematically undervalued relative had not only achieved independent success, but had become their primary competitive threat, challenged fundamental assumptions about capability, loyalty, and the natural order of family business hierarchies. Michael's response reflected different aspects of the emotional turmoil that my disclosure had generated. Isabella, assuming this information is accurate, why did you choose to keep your business activities secret, rather than offering to help Meridian Holdings address the competitive challenges we have been facing? Your expertise could have strengthened our company, instead of creating additional competition. The question addressed the strategic choices I had made throughout the development of Pinnacle Development Group, while highlighting the irony that my family was now expressing interest in my contributions after years of systematic exclusion from meaningful participation in their strategic planning processes. The implicit assumption that I should have offered assistance to an organization that had consistently rejected my insights reflected the persistent blindness to their own role in creating the circumstances that led to this revelation. My father's reaction proved most complex, combining pride in my achievements with confusion about the implications for family relationships and business dynamics. Isabella, your mother and I are incredibly proud of what you have accomplished independently. However, we are struggling to understand how this situation developed without our knowledge and what it means for our family's business relationships moving forward. His response acknowledged the personal achievement while recognizing the broader implications for family dynamics and business strategy that extended far beyond individual success or failure. The revelation had created circumstances that would require comprehensive reassessment of relationships, assumptions, and strategic approaches that had governed Romano family interactions for decades. Uncle Vincent's processing of this information required several minutes of careful examination of the documentation I had provided, during which the conference room remained silent except for the sound of papers being reviewed and financial statements being analyzed. His expertise in business operations enabled him to quickly verify the authenticity and significance of the evidence, while grappling with the personal and professional implications of my disclosure. When he finally spoke, his tone reflected the struggle between professional acknowledgement of achievement and personal grappling with the challenge to his leadership assumptions. Isabella, the financial performance and client relationships documented here represent remarkable accomplishments that demonstrate exceptional business acumen and strategic execution. However, I am having difficulty understanding how someone we believed lacked practical business experience could achieve such sophisticated results in highly competitive markets. His statement revealed the depth of reassessment required to accommodate evidence that contradicted years of established beliefs about my capabilities and potential contributions. The cognitive dissonance between my demonstrated success and their previous dismissal of my expertise created psychological challenges that extended beyond simple acknowledgement of facts to encompass fundamental questions about judgment, perception, and the reliability of their assessment processes. The presentation of specific examples of how Pinnacle Development Group had secured clients who had terminated relationships with Meridian Holdings created additional complexity, as family members grappled with the reality that their competitive disadvantages had been directly contributed to by someone they had systematically excluded from strategic planning processes. The irony that their own relative had identified and successfully addressed market opportunities that they had failed to recognize represented comprehensive validation of capabilities they had consistently undervalued. The Harrison manufacturing contract that we lost 6 months ago, I explained, referencing one of the most significant financial setbacks Meridian Holdings had experienced, was awarded to Pinnacle Development Group because we could provide comprehensive sustainability programs, advanced technological integration, and strategic consulting services that address their operational requirements. These capabilities represent exactly the innovations I proposed during my attempts to contribute to our family business strategic planning. The connection between their past rejection of my recommendations and their current competitive disadvantages created uncomfortable recognition that systematic undervaluation had contributed directly to the crisis they were now facing. The strategic insights they had dismissed as impractical theoretical concepts had proven highly valuable when implemented through Pinnacle Development Group's client relationships and project execution. The discussion of financial implications required careful navigation of complex emotional and strategic considerations that would determine whether this revelation could create opportunities for constructive collaboration or would permanently damage family relationships while failing to address Meridian Holdings' competitive challenges. The stakes extended beyond personal vindication to encompass the preservation of business enterprises and family relationships that represented generations of shared history and mutual dependence. Uncle Vincent's analysis of the competitive dynamics revealed sophisticated understanding of the strategic advantages that Pinnacle Development Group had achieved through innovative approaches and comprehensive service offerings. His acknowledgement that these advantages had contributed significantly to Meridian Holdings' declining market position represented unprecedented recognition of the value of perspectives and capabilities that had been systematically excluded from family business strategic planning. The technological integration programs and sustainability initiatives that Pinnacle has implemented represent exactly the strategic directions that could address our competitive disadvantages, Uncle Vincent admitted, his professional assessment overriding personal discomfort with the implications of acknowledging superior strategic thinking from someone he had consistently underestimated. The question now becomes whether there are opportunities for collaboration that could benefit both enterprises while addressing the competitive challenges facing our industry. His willingness to consider strategic collaboration represented remarkable evolution from his previous resistance to innovation and dismissal of alternative approaches to business development. The crisis had created conditions where demonstrated success could overcome established prejudices, though the emotional and relational complexity of family business dynamics would require careful management to achieve constructive outcomes. The proposal for potential collaboration between Meridian Holdings and Pinnacle Development Group required addressing multiple layers of complexity, including competitive concerns, family dynamics, financial structures, and strategic objectives that might prove difficult to align despite the apparent benefits of combining resources and capabilities. The integration of innovative methodologies with established client relationships could create competitive advantages that neither company could achieve independently. However, the discussion also revealed persistent resistance to acknowledging the full implications of my capabilities and achievements. Anthony continued to express skepticism about whether my success represented sustainable competitive advantages or temporary market conditions that might prove less durable than traditional approaches to business development. His questions reflected defensive mechanisms that protected established hierarchies while minimizing the significance of evidence that challenged conventional assumptions about capability and worth. Michael's focus on operational considerations and implementation challenges demonstrated more constructive engagement with the strategic opportunities that collaboration could create. His analysis of potential synergies between Pinnacle's innovative capabilities and Meridian Holdings' established client relationships suggested genuine interest in exploring solutions that could address competitive disadvantages while preserving family business interests. The conversation gradually shifted from defensive reactions and cognitive dissonance toward pragmatic assessment of strategic alternatives that could address the crisis facing Meridian Holdings while acknowledging the demonstrated value of capabilities that had been systematically undervalued. The revelation had created foundation for constructive engagement, though significant challenges remained in translating recognition into actionable collaboration. The emotional complexity of this transformation required careful attention to personal relationships and family dynamics that extended beyond business considerations to encompass identity, respect, and the fundamental nature of how family members understood their relative worth and contributions. The systematic undervaluation that had driven my independent success had also created psychological barriers that would require genuine commitment to overcome. The implementation challenge extended beyond strategic planning to encompass the personal courage required from all family members to acknowledge past mistakes while embracing solutions that challenged established assumptions about leadership, capability, and the sources of valuable business insights. The success of this process would determine whether the Romano family could adapt to evidence that contradicted traditional beliefs while preserving relationships that remained personally important despite their professional limitations. The initial shock of my revelation gradually gave way to more complex psychological responses as family members processed the implications of my ownership of Pinnacle Development Group and its role in Meridian Holdings' competitive challenges. While Uncle Vincent and my father demonstrated genuine attempts to grapple with the evidence I had presented, other family members exhibited defensive mechanisms that sought to minimize the significance of my achievements while protecting established narratives about capability and worth within the Romano family hierarchy. The resistance manifested most prominently through Anthony's systematic attempts to discredit both my business accomplishments and the strategic value of Pinnacle Development Group's innovative approaches. His challenges reflected deeper concerns about how my success threatened his own position within the family business structure and called into question the merit-based assumptions that had justified his advancement to senior management roles despite limited educational credentials or demonstrated strategic capabilities. Anthony's first line of attack focused on questioning the sustainability of Pinnacle Development Group's business model and client relationships. Isabella, the contracts you have shown us represent short-term agreements with clients who may have selected your company based on pricing advantages rather than superior capabilities, he argued during the heated discussion that followed my presentation. These relationships may prove less durable than the long-term partnerships that Meridian Holdings has cultivated through decades of reliable service and proven performance. His critique attempted to reframe Pinnacle's success as temporary market opportunism rather than genuine competitive advantages achieved through strategic innovation and operational excellence. The implication that sophisticated corporate clients would make multi-million-dollar development decisions based primarily on cost considerations revealed fundamental misunderstanding of contemporary business requirements and decision-making processes, while also demonstrating the extent to which traditional thinking constrained his ability to recognize market evolution. The financial documentation I had provided clearly contradicted Anthony's assertions about pricing strategies and client motivations. Pinnacle Development Group's contracts consistently commanded premium pricing compared to traditional development services, with clients explicitly acknowledging the value of comprehensive capabilities and innovative approaches that justified higher fees through superior results and operational benefits. The evidence demonstrated that sophisticated clients were willing to pay substantially more for services that addressed their actual requirements, rather than settling for conventional offerings that failed to meet contemporary business needs. Michael's resistance took different forms that reflected his position within client relationship management and his concerns about how my revelation affected his professional standing and future advancement opportunities. Rather than directly challenging my business accomplishments, he questioned my decision-making process and family loyalty in establishing competitive enterprises without consulting family leadership or seeking collaborative approaches that could have strengthened existing business relationships. Isabella, I understand that you felt excluded from meaningful participation in our family business, but establishing direct competition without attempting to address these concerns through family discussions seems unnecessarily divisive, Michael stated during a particularly tense exchange. Your capabilities could have been utilized to strengthen Meridian Holdings rather than creating competitive threats that have contributed to our current crisis. His critique reflected the persistent assumption that my primary obligation was to support existing family business interests, rather than pursuing independent professional development, when meaningful opportunities were systematically denied within established organizational structures. The implicit expectation that I should have continued seeking acceptance from leadership that had consistently demonstrated their inability to recognize my value revealed how deeply ingrained patterns of exclusion had become normalized within family business culture. The moral complexity of Michael's argument required careful consideration of competing obligations and ethical responsibilities that extended beyond simple family loyalty to encompass broader principles of fairness, merit-based opportunity, and individual professional development. While family businesses often expected sacrifice of individual interests for collective benefit, this expectation became problematic when it perpetuated systematic exclusion and prevented optimal utilization of available talent and expertise. My response addressed these concerns directly while maintaining focus on constructive solutions rather than defensive justifications for strategic decisions that had proven successful through measurable results. Michael, I appreciate your perspective about family loyalty and collaborative approaches. However, my attempts to contribute meaningfully to Meridian Holdings' strategic planning were consistently rejected or dismissed over a period of several years. The establishment of Pinnacle Development Group represented my response to systematic exclusion rather than preference for competition over collaboration. The evidence supporting this position included documentation of proposals I had submitted, meetings where my recommendations had been dismissed, and strategic plans that had been rejected without serious consideration despite their technical sophistication and potential value. The pattern of exclusion was comprehensive and well documented, providing clear justification for pursuing independent opportunities when traditional pathways remained blocked by prejudice and conventional thinking. However, the most concerning resistance emerged from extended family members who possessed limited direct involvement in business operations but wielded significant influence within family decision-making processes. These individuals approached my revelation through the lens of traditional gender expectations and social hierarchies that viewed independent female entrepreneurship as inappropriate departure from established family roles and responsibilities. Aunt Margaret, Uncle Vincent's wife, and an influential voice within family social dynamics, expressed concerns that reflected these traditional perspectives. Isabella, while your business accomplishments are certainly impressive, I worry about how your competitive activities may have damaged family relationships and created unnecessary tension within our business community. Perhaps there are ways to redirect your talents toward more collaborative endeavors that support family unity rather than creating division. Her suggestion that my professional success represented a threat to family harmony rather than an achievement worthy of celebration revealed how deeply gender-based expectations influenced perceptions of appropriate behavior and career development. The implicit assumption that my primary responsibility involved maintaining family relationships rather than pursuing professional excellence reflected outdated social norms that contradicted contemporary understanding of individual rights and merit-based opportunity. The resistance also manifested through subtle attempts to undermine my credibility and question the authenticity of my business accomplishments. Several family members expressed skepticism about whether someone with my background and experience could realistically achieve the level of success that Pinnacle Development Group represented, suggesting that external factors or advantageous circumstances might have contributed more significantly to positive outcomes than my personal capabilities and strategic decision-making. These challenges required comprehensive documentation of my role in every aspect of Pinnacle Development Group's development, from initial business plan creation through client acquisition, project management, and strategic planning processes. The evidence demonstrated active leadership in all critical business functions, rather than passive participation or reliance on external expertise to achieve successful outcomes. The psychological dynamics underlying this resistance reflected broader patterns of cognitive dissonance that occur when established beliefs are challenged by contradictory evidence. Family members who had invested years in maintaining narratives about my limited capabilities faced difficult choices between acknowledging their systematic misjudgment or finding alternative explanations that preserved existing worldviews while minimizing the significance of evidence that challenged their assumptions. The sabotage attempts became more sophisticated as family members recognized that direct challenges to my accomplishments were difficult to sustain given the comprehensive evidence I had provided. Instead, they shifted toward undermining the strategic value of collaboration between Meridian Holdings and Pinnacle Development Group, arguing that such partnerships could create conflicts of interest, competitive complications, or reputational risks that outweighed potential benefits. Anthony proposed alternative solutions that would address Meridian Holdings' competitive challenges without acknowledging the strategic value of my expertise or creating formal partnerships with Pinnacle Development Group. His recommendations included hiring external consultants, pursuing acquisitions of smaller development firms, or implementing internal training programs that could develop innovative capabilities without relying on family members whose loyalty he questioned. These alternatives reflected persistent inability to recognize that the expertise they needed already existed within their family structure and had been demonstrated through successful business development and client relationship management. The preference for external solutions over internal capabilities revealed how thoroughly systematic undervaluation had become embedded within family business decision-making processes. The resistance reached its peak when several family members suggested that my revelation represented manipulation or strategic deception, designed to gain advantage in family business discussions rather than genuine attempt to provide helpful information during a crisis period. This interpretation reframed my disclosure as self-serving rather than altruistic, suggesting that my motivations involved personal advancement rather than family business preservation. The accusation of manipulation required direct response that addressed both the factual accuracy of their claims and the broader implications of continued resistance to evidence-based assessment of capabilities and contributions. The suggestion that my revelation represents manipulation demonstrates exactly the kind of thinking that created our current crisis. I stated firmly during one particularly heated exchange, "My success with Pinnacle Development Group proves that the strategic insights you consistently dismissed as impractical were actually valuable enough to generate substantial competitive advantages when properly implemented." The confrontation forced explicit acknowledgement of the connection between their systematic rejection of my contributions and the competitive disadvantages that now threatened Meridian Holdings' survival. The resistance to accepting this connection reflected deeper psychological investments in maintaining established hierarchies and avoiding responsibility for strategic failures that had resulted from prejudiced decision-making processes. However, the resistance also revealed important information about family dynamics and organizational culture that would need to be addressed regardless of whether formal collaboration between the companies ultimately proved feasible. The systematic patterns of exclusion and undervaluation that had driven my independent success represented broader structural problems that affected organizational performance and strategic decision-making beyond individual career development concerns. The challenge became determining whether the evidence I had presented could overcome entrenched resistance and create genuine opportunities for constructive collaboration, or whether traditional prejudices and defensive mechanisms would prevent recognition of solutions that could address both business challenges and family relationship dynamics. The success of this process would ultimately determine whether systematic undervaluation could be overcome through demonstrated competence, or whether established biases were too deeply embedded to accommodate evidence that challenged fundamental assumptions about worth and capability. The breakthrough came at precisely 3:47 p.m., when Uncle Vincent's executive assistant, Patricia, interrupted our heated family discussion with an urgent message that would forever change the dynamics of our conversation and the trajectory of Meridian Holdings' future. The timing proved extraordinary, as though the universe had conspired to provide definitive proof of my capabilities at the exact moment when family resistance to acknowledging my achievements had reached its most obstinate peak. Patricia entered the conference room with obvious reluctance, clearly aware that she was interrupting a sensitive family meeting but compelled by the urgency of the information she carried. Her expression conveyed both professional concern and barely contained excitement, as she approached Uncle Vincent with a folder containing what she described as the most significant business development opportunity Meridian Holdings had received in over 18 months. "Mr. Romano, I apologize for the interruption, but I have received a formal proposal from Metropolitan Industries that requires immediate senior leadership review," Patricia announced, her voice carrying the careful professionalism that characterized her interactions during critical business moments. "They are requesting comprehensive development services for their Northeast expansion project, and they have specifically mentioned innovative sustainability programs and technological integration capabilities as primary selection criteria. The Metropolitan Industries opportunity, represented exactly the type of sophisticated client engagement that Meridian Holdings had been struggling to secure as their traditional service offerings became increasingly inadequate for contemporary market requirements. Metropolitan Industries operated over 200 manufacturing facilities across North America and had established reputation for implementing cutting-edge operational technologies and environmental sustainability programs that exceeded industry standards. Uncle Vincent accepted the proposal documents with expressions that reflected both hope and apprehension, recognizing that this opportunity could provide the financial stability and strategic direction necessary to address their current crisis, while also understanding that their company currently lacked many of the capabilities that Metropolitan Industries would undoubtedly require from their development partners. As he reviewed the detailed requirements outlined in Metropolitan's request for proposal, Uncle Vincent's expression shifted from cautious optimism to growing concern, as the scope and sophistication of their expectations became apparent. The project involved developing 3 integrated manufacturing and distribution complexes that would incorporate advanced automation systems, comprehensive environmental monitoring technologies, renewable energy infrastructure, and sophisticated data analytics capabilities for operational optimization. The technical specifications exceeded anything that Meridian Holdings had previously attempted, requiring expertise in emerging technologies, sustainability frameworks, and regulatory compliance standards that represented the cutting edge of contemporary development practices. More challenging still were the financial requirements, which included performance guarantees, environmental impact assessments, and long-term operational support commitments that demanded both technical expertise and substantial resource capacity. The proposal timeline requires initial capability presentations within 10 business days, with final submissions due within 6 weeks. Uncle Vincent announced to the family gathering, his voice reflecting the weight of opportunity combined with recognition of their current limitations. The contract value exceeds $60 million over 3 years, with potential for additional phases that could generate substantially more revenue if initial performance meets their expectations. The magnitude of this opportunity created immediate recognition that Meridian Holdings faced a defining moment that could either restore their competitive position and financial stability or expose their limitations in ways that would confirm their decline toward irrelevance in evolving markets. The stakes extended beyond immediate financial considerations to encompass the fundamental question of whether the company possessed the strategic vision and operational capabilities necessary to compete successfully in contemporary business environments. Anthony's immediate response revealed the depth of strategic limitations that had contributed to their competitive decline. We can partner with external consultants to address the technical requirements while leveraging our established project management capabilities and regional relationships to secure the contract, he suggested, demonstrating persistent reliance on traditional approaches rather than fundamental capability development. His proposal reflected the same thinking that had contributed to their current crisis, treating sophisticated client requirements as problems to be managed through external resources rather than recognizing them as evidence of market evolution that demanded comprehensive organizational adaptation. The approach would likely result in costly implementations that failed to deliver superior value, while preventing Meridian Holdings from developing internal capabilities necessary for long-term competitiveness. Michael's assessment proved somewhat more realistic but equally constrained by conventional thinking. The technical requirements exceed our current capabilities, and the timeline prevents substantial capability development through training or hiring programs. We may need to decline this opportunity while focusing on projects that better align with our existing strengths, he recommended, essentially acknowledging defeat before attempting serious engagement with the challenge. His willingness to abandon potentially transformative opportunities rather than pursuing innovative solutions demonstrated how thoroughly conservative thinking had constrained strategic ambition within Meridian Holdings' leadership culture. The preference for maintaining limitations rather than expanding capabilities represented exactly the mindset that had enabled more adaptive competitors to capture market share and establish superior competitive positions. The discussion continued for several minutes, with various family members proposing incremental approaches that might address portions of Metropolitan's requirements, while avoiding the comprehensive innovation and strategic transformation that would be necessary to deliver truly competitive responses. The conversation revealed systematic inability to recognize that their current crises resulted from exactly this type of limited thinking and resistance to ambitious strategic initiatives. The vindication moment arrived when I finally spoke, my voice carrying the quiet confidence that comes from possessing demonstrable solutions to seemingly impossible challenges. Uncle Vincent, I need to inform you that Pinnacle Development Group has already been contacted by Metropolitan Industries regarding this same project opportunity. We submitted preliminary capability presentations last week and have been invited to participate in their formal selection process. The silence that followed this announcement was profound and immediate, as family members processed the implications of learning that their primary competitive threat was already engaged with the client they desperately hoped to secure. The coincidence was too extraordinary to dismiss. Providing undeniable evidence of Pinnacle Development Group's market position and strategic capabilities, while simultaneously demonstrating the scope of competitive disadvantages that Meridian Holdings faced in contemporary markets. Uncle Vincent requested immediate access to Pinnacle's preliminary presentations to understand how they had approached Metropolitan's complex requirements and what capabilities they had demonstrated to earn invitation into the formal selection process. The reversal was complete and stunning, as the family member they had systematically undervalued was now being asked to provide strategic guidance for their most critical business development opportunity. I retrieved the comprehensive presentation materials that Pinnacle Development Group had prepared for Metropolitan Industries, including detailed technical specifications, implementation timelines, financial projections, and capability demonstrations that addressed every aspect of their sophisticated requirements. The materials represented hundreds of hours of strategic analysis and innovative problem-solving that had positioned Pinnacle as a leading candidate for the contract award. The presentation revealed sophisticated understanding of advanced manufacturing technologies, environmental sustainability frameworks, regulatory compliance requirements, and operational optimization strategies that exceeded anything Meridian Holdings had previously attempted or imagined possible. The technical sophistication and innovative approaches demonstrated exactly the kind of strategic thinking and execution capability that sophisticated clients required from their development partners. More importantly, the materials revealed how Pinnacle Development Group had approached Metropolitan's requirements as opportunities for innovation rather than obstacles to be overcome through conventional methods. The solutions integrated multiple advanced technologies and strategic frameworks to create comprehensive value propositions that exceeded client expectations while generating superior financial returns through operational efficiency and long-term performance optimization. Anthony's reaction to reviewing these materials proved particularly revealing, as he struggled to process evidence that comprehensively contradicted his previous assertions about the sustainability and value of Pinnacle's business model. Isabella, the technical specifications and implementation strategies outlined here represent remarkable sophistication that I did not realize was achievable through independent development firms, he admitted, his tone reflecting genuine surprise and grudging respect. Michael's response demonstrated similar recognition of capabilities that exceeded his previous understanding of what was possible through innovative approaches to complex development challenges. The integration of sustainability frameworks with advanced automation systems creates value propositions that traditional development approaches simply cannot match, he acknowledged, finally recognizing the strategic advantages that had enabled Pinnacle to secure contracts with clients who had terminated relationships with Meridian Holdings. Uncle Vincent's assessment proved most significant, as his expertise in business operations enabled him to fully appreciate the strategic sophistication and competitive advantages that Pinnacle Development Group had achieved through innovative methodologies and comprehensive capability development. Isabella, the capabilities demonstrated in these materials represent exactly what Meridian Holdings needs to remain competitive in evolving markets, he stated with unmistakable acknowledgement of my strategic value. The vindication was complete and undeniable. The family member they had dismissed as lacking practical business understanding had developed capabilities that exceeded their most ambitious expectations, while building competitive advantages that positioned her company as a leader in emerging market segments. The systematic undervaluation that had driven my independent success had prevented them from accessing exactly the expertise they now desperately needed to survive and prosper. The Metropolitan Industries opportunity created perfect circumstances for demonstrating the practical value of collaboration between our companies while addressing the crisis that threatened Meridian Holdings' continued viability. The combined resources and capabilities of both enterprises could deliver superior responses to sophisticated client requirements while establishing strategic partnerships that benefited all stakeholders involved in the collaboration. However, the vindication also exposed the full cost of systematic exclusion and undervaluation that had characterized my relationship with the Romano family business throughout my professional development. The capabilities they now sought to access had been available within their family structure for years, consistently offered through strategic proposals and recommendations that were dismissed without serious consideration. The moment of recognition was both triumphant and sobering, demonstrating that competence and strategic value could eventually overcome entrenched prejudices, while also revealing how thoroughly established biases had prevented optimal utilization of available talent and expertise. The vindication represented not only personal achievement, but also comprehensive validation of approaches to innovation and strategic development that could transform organizational performance when properly implemented and supported. The transformation in family dynamics that followed my vindication created unprecedented challenges that required careful navigation of relationships, expectations, and strategic opportunities that had never existed during my years of systematic exclusion. The sudden recognition of my capabilities and the strategic value of Pinnacle Development Group fundamentally altered power structures within the Romano family business, while creating complex obligations and opportunities that demanded sophisticated decision-making about the future direction of both enterprises. Uncle Vincent's immediate proposal for formal collaboration between Meridian Holdings and Pinnacle Development Group reflected recognition that their survival depended on accessing innovative capabilities that they had systematically excluded from their strategic planning processes. However, his approach to structuring this partnership revealed persistent assumptions about hierarchy and control that suggested incomplete understanding of how thoroughly circumstances had changed following my revelation and vindication. The partnership framework he proposed involved Pinnacle Development Group, providing consulting services and technical expertise to support Meridian Holdings, response to the metropolitan industry's opportunity, while maintaining traditional organizational structures and decision-making authority within the family business. This arrangement would have provided Meridian Holdings with access to necessary capabilities while preserving established hierarchies that had previously prevented recognition of my contributions and strategic insights. The proposal reflected sophisticated understanding of immediate tactical requirements combined with limited appreciation for the fundamental changes in competitive dynamics and strategic positioning that my success had created. Uncle Vincent recognized that Pinnacle's capabilities were essential for addressing contemporary market challenges, while remaining reluctant to acknowledge that these capabilities represented superior strategic thinking and execution that challenged traditional approaches to business development and organizational leadership. My response required balancing multiple competing objectives, including preserving family relationships, maximizing strategic opportunities for both enterprises, establishing appropriate recognition for my achievements and capabilities, and creating sustainable frameworks for collaboration that addressed fundamental rather than superficial aspects of their competitive disadvantages. The stakes extended beyond immediate business considerations to encompass long-term implications for family dynamics and organizational culture. The complexity of this negotiation was compounded by emerging external pressures that demanded immediate attention and strategic responses. Metropolitan Industries had scheduled capability presentations for the following week, requiring coordinated preparation that would demonstrate comprehensive expertise, while positioning both companies advantageously for contract award consideration. The timeline prevented extensive deliberation about partnership structures, while demanding immediate collaboration on materials that would determine their competitive prospects. Anthony's adjustment to these new circumstances proved particularly challenging as he struggled to reconcile his previous dismissal of my capabilities with the overwhelming evidence of strategic excellence that had emerged through Pinnacle Development Group's success. His attempts to maintain relevance within revised organizational dynamics reflected genuine recognition of my achievements, combined with defensive mechanisms that protected his self-perception and professional standing within family business hierarchies. The psychological complexity of this adjustment became apparent during strategic planning sessions, where Anthony attempted to contribute insights about client requirements and implementation strategies while acknowledging his limited understanding of advanced technologies and innovative methodologies that Pinnacle had mastered. His efforts demonstrated genuine commitment to family business success while revealing how thoroughly traditional approaches had constrained strategic thinking and competitive capabilities. Michael's response to changed circumstances reflected different challenges related to his role in client relationship management and business development activities that had previously defined his primary contributions to family business operations. The emergence of Pinnacle Development Group as a superior competitor in precisely these areas created obvious questions about his continued effectiveness and strategic value within evolving organizational structures. However, Michael's adaptation proved more constructive than Anthony's defensive reactions, as he recognized opportunities to leverage Pinnacle's capabilities and market positioning to enhance rather than replace his contributions to business development and client relationship management. His proposal for integrated approaches that combined Pinnacle's technical expertise with Meridian Holdings' established client relationships demonstrated strategic thinking that could create competitive advantages neither company could achieve independently. The most significant challenge involved managing expectations about my role and responsibilities within collaborative frameworks that acknowledged my strategic leadership while preserving family relationships and organizational stability. The sudden transition from systematically excluded family member to essential strategic asset created obvious complications for established authority structures and decision-making processes that had operated for decades, without meaningful input from sources they had consistently undervalued. My father's perspective on these developments proved particularly valuable, as he possessed intimate knowledge of family dynamics combined with objective assessment of business requirements that enabled constructive mediation between competing interests and expectations. His recognition that my success represented both personal achievement and strategic opportunity for family business preservation provided foundation for discussions that transcended defensive reactions and focused on optimal utilization of available capabilities and resources. The strategic planning process for responding to metropolitan industries requirements revealed additional complexity as we attempted to integrate Pinnacle's innovative methodologies with Meridian Holdings' established operational frameworks, and client relationship management systems. The technical sophistication required for competitive responses exceeded anything either company had previously attempted independently, while demanding coordination and collaboration that tested organizational boundaries and cultural differences. Pinnacle Development Group's approach to complex development projects emphasized comprehensive integration of advanced technologies with strategic consulting services that optimized long-term operational performance rather than minimizing initial development costs. This methodology required sophisticated understanding of client business requirements combined with technical expertise in emerging systems and regulatory frameworks that traditional development firms typically avoided due to complexity and resource demands. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.